Lên. Giờ nó sẽ hai lên. Giờ nó sẽ hai lần. Cái thành phần thế nào nói đây nha.
Is our enemy in Vietnam. He is called the Viet Cong, VC for short. That means Communist Viet. These prisoners are typical, including the women. They've been interrogated and tortured for a week. There are over 100,000 of them in South Vietnam, many of them infiltrated from North Vietnam. Their techniques of terror, persuasion, subversion, and guerrilla warfare have been perfected in 20 years of revolutionary fighting in Asia. Barefooted, without uniforms, they are winning the war. Vietnam is beautiful, the war often hard to see. This is the first of many paradoxes south of the 17th parallel. Not Trang here on the South China Sea is Vietnam's Riviera. Fresh oysters are flown daily to Saigon's restaurants. Vacationers still visit the beaches. But like most of Vietnam's cities, Nha Trang remains a pocket of peace and prosperity, only by virtue of the troops and artillery ringing it. It is a besieged paradise. Vietnam is a rice-rich country conjured up by non-Vietnamese diplomats at Geneva. Its borders are the accidental outcome of ancient conquests, French map-making, and Cold War compromise. It is a mixture of pretty scenery and ugly events. It's a land afflicted with a split personality, cities where people talk about the war and if possible make money from it, and the countryside where people die from it. Nowhere are the inconsistencies of Vietnam's war more obvious than in Saigon. Here peace and war coexist with alarming grace. The runways at Saigon Airport are lined with warplanes, which fly over 1,000 missions a week. But 37 times a week, the military traffic pauses to allow the landing of sleek international airliners. Commercial planes approaching Saigon are seldom fired on by the Viet Cong, but military aircraft are riddled with increasing frequency. Even ambulance helicopters go armed in self-defense. The ambulance helicopters leave Saigon day and night and haul in 700 casualties a month. Their code name is Dust-Off. The civilian side of the airfield has a bright, modernistic terminal with luxurious VIP facilities. For years, it has been the scene of press conferences in which departing American dignitaries have assured the world that the war is going splendidly. Just across the runway is the mortuary where American combat dead are processed for shipment home. Each arriving commercial plane carries its cargo of generals, Paris dress designers, mutual fund salesmen, CIA agents, and round-the-world tourists. To the tourist, braced for a war-torn capital, Saigon is a surprise.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Miss Susie. Before starting the tour this morning, I would like to extend to all of you our warmest welcome. Many thanks for your visit to Saigon. They say that you haven't seen the Orient if you haven't seen Southeast Asia, and I think that you haven't seen Southeast Asia if you haven't been in Saigon. Saigon, the sophisticated capital of the Free Republic of Vietnam, is one of the most attractive cities in Southeast Asia. It is noted for its beautiful women wearing long tunics slit up to the waist. It has been called the Pearl of the Far East and Paris of the Orient, and is characterized by a combination of French and Oriental cultures and tastes. The population, which was 400,000 before the last war, has now increased to an estimated 2 million. This overcrowding of the city has resulted in a heavy traffic, an atmosphere of constant activity, and a housing shortage. But however, despite of this overcrowding of the city and of business activity, Saigon has retained much of its pre-war beauty. Many public gardens, streets bordered with trees, and sidewalk cafes, etc. Saigon history dates back only to 200 years, when it was just a cluster of huts of fishermen.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. Be back here at 5 minutes to 12, 8 minutes to 12.
What Miss Susie might add, but doesn't, is that in 10 years since independence, Saigon has never had a popular or competent government. But American aid money, $3 billion, has created a fine city for shopping. Markets glitter with imported typewriters, locally made falsies, and black markets hawking stolen United States Army supplies are as common as dime stores. The United States Embassy advises tourists that bus trips outside the city are no longer recommended. Leaving Saigon, even by dust-off ambulance helicopter, has its risks. The Viet Cong offer a bounty of almost $500 for each chopper shot down.
Getting out of the bus is a major problem.
Over here is the zoo and the botanical garden.
Do we go in there?
As far as I know, the zoo was founded in 1864 by a French botanist. It possesses the largest...
She tells the tourists about the exotic wildlife and world-famous orchid collection, but not that the late President Siem used underground vaults here to cage political prisoners. Nor that later, from these pretty flower beds, rebels launched the attack which ended in the overthrow and murder of Siem.
Yeah.
You buy?
Maybe not now, later.
You buy?
Maybe later, okay?
Day number
We just
one.
had breakfast.
Day number one.
Siem's murder was officially described as accidental suicide, a phrase which illustrates the Vietnamese talent for rationalizing away unpleasant facts.
Watch, we are in contact with dust-off now at 346.
Near Saigon, red smoke signals the dust-off chopper in to pick up a wounded Vietnamese soldier. The Americans call these little troopers the ARVN. Modern equipment has not changed the course of the war in Vietnam. The war has become a sort of end run around modern military technology. A war of ambush, bamboo stakes poisoned with human excrement, decapitated school teachers, tortured prisoners, and burned villages. For the American earning combat pay as an advisor, it's probably the most difficult war ever. His tour is a year, a long time, but not long enough to become expert in guerrilla war. His advice must be filtered through a language barrier, and even then, he is frequently ignored. Conditioned to aggressiveness, he finds himself fighting by rules which often allow the enemy the first shot. In Saigon, the war has not affected the traditional 2-hour lunch break.
Over there is a circus sportive where people can go to play tennis and swim, as well as dine there and have a good time.
As one American put it, we haven't taught the Saigonese to win a war, but they have certainly taught us how to lose one pleasantly. Saigon's prosperity has caused a long waiting list for admission to membership in the circle. But once in, it's worth it. The cooking is French, and so are the bathing suits. In a war where statistics are often cited to show that our side is winning, it is surprising that there are no accurate figures on the number of people killed and wounded. The Pentagon admits its figures on Vietnamese Army casualties don't add up. There are no counts at all on the civilians killed. There is an understandable lack of enthusiasm by Vietnamese for dying in this war. The war has failed to become a crusade. The fact is that few people are eager to get shot at in a rice paddy for a government that has little support, for a country that has less and less cohesion, and in an army that has not yet figured out how to fight a guerrilla war. Saigon sunbathing intellectuals frequently criticize the United States for having taught the Vietnamese how to shoot, but not how to love their country.
People are always asking me about the war, but I think that Saigon is a pretty peaceful city. The war is far away, so we better not mention it, as it might spawn on the fun of your tours.
The losses for the week, U.S. losses from hostile action were 11. 1 KIA, 1 MIA, and 9 wounded in action. Last week, these were 31, as you recall, 4 killed in action and 27 wounded in action. RVN personnel losses were 840.
The tourists also miss the weekly press briefing by the American military.
WIA, 505. Missing in action or captured, 120. VC losses, personnel, 305. Of these, 235 were KIA, 70 were wounded in action. The kill ratio this week was about equal. Actually, it was 1.1 to 1 in favor of the government.
At about 8 o'clock, all the shops are closed down, and then the nightlife begins with many nightclubs and night strollers, couples of young boys and girls, and the many dazzling neon signs. Saigon is a place where you can have fun.
Under the French, Saigon was famous for opium dens and the world's biggest brothel. But now the nightlife is for Americans.
Et maintenant, Charleston, présenté également par le groupe chorégraphique du Moulin Rouge.
Despite the recent midnight curfew, business is good. A Coca-Cola here costs $2. American bourbon is plentiful, and the bar girls will speak English while holding your hand.
Tiger 6 or Victor, over. Tiger 6 is on the ground. Present time should be airborne in 05.
100 miles south of the Charleston, the Viet Cong have trapped an ARVN unit. A U.S. helicopter company scrambles to the rescue from its rice paddy airstrips at Suc Trong. The pilots call themselves the Suc Trong Tigers. There still is a nostalgia in Saigon for the French. The can-can is heard from time to time as a kind of gaudy epitaph for 100 years of French colonial rule and 140,000 French military casualties in their 8-year war against the communist guerrillas. Until the very end, the French generals were convinced their modern equipment and air power could prevent defeat.
What's your position in relation to LZ? Oh, come on, answer the damn radio. Tiger lead, this is back at 260. You read? Tiger lead, just like it 2-1. Do you read?
This is Tiger 6 now. On the last report, the BC position is at coordinates 403-785. Over.
All right, Tiger 6, 403-785. Thank you. All right, you understand this is back in 2-6. You have spotted approximately 2-5 Victor Charlie sampan on a heading up.
The Suktrong Tigers en route to the battle area. They fly at 2,000 feet to avoid Viet Cong machine guns.
Request that you remark or mark with smoke, please. Over. Tracking 2-1, this is Tiger lead. Right, what's your position in relation to the LZ? Tiger lead is west of the LZ this time. All right, how far west? 260, brother.
The rendezvous area is a dusty landing strip outside the provincial capital of Vitan in the Mekong Delta. Earlier that morning, an ARVN unit marched out of Vitan. The sequence of events which followed is familiar to Americans in the Delta. American advice on ambush precautions was ignored, air cover was unavailable, a supporting ARVN unit which could have changed defeat to victory failed to advance. The result, a real case of accidental suicide. Over 100 ARVN casualties, an American sergeant missing, a captain wounded.
Okay, Joe, you're going to go out with Colonel Kersey and select this LZ up here. We'll take off from here. The Tigers lead out. We'll go down to Kin Tin, make a pickup there, go back towards the LC. At that time, Tiger Leader will check in with Tiger 6 here and get a briefing and a vector into the LZ. Give me some more hose! More hose!
The pilots in a sort of frontline committee meeting with ground advisors and Vietnamese officials try to work out a plan to destroy an enemy that is already vanishing. As these pictures were taken, the Viet Cong were hiding their weapons, including over 100 newly captured ones, and becoming peaceful civilians. Despite the jet scream of modern war, just across the canal, life goes on in the paddies as it has for 1,000 years. American helicopters cannot win the war in Vietnam without the support of these people in the paddies. But it's one of the contradictions of the war that the peasant, who is the key to its outcome and who suffers most from it, still has no real commitment to it. Both the VC and the government promise him a bright future, but neither side has much succeeded in brightening his present. 3/4 of Vietnam's people are rice farmers like these. They're poor, illiterate, undernourished, and have never known political liberty. Their life expectancy is 35 years. A large percentage are sharecroppers, paying a stiff rental for the privilege of farming someone else's land. Given a free choice, the average peasant would probably choose no government. Government in the past has usually meant oppression, but the peasant has no choice. Caught between Viet Cong intimidation and government inefficiency, he can only continue to take orders from whichever side seems to be in control and try to survive. Most primitive of the people caught up in the war in Vietnam are these Montagnards who inhabit the vast highlands. This is a village of the Rade tribe. Among other unique attributes, the Rade have a matriarchal society in which the females propose marriage and family wealth is passed on to the daughter. The lowland Vietnamese call the Montagnards barbarians and generally consider them inferior beings. The Montagnards in turn detest the Vietnamese and cling to their own tribal ways. For years, American aid officials have tried to convince the Montagnards to use their buffalo for farming instead of for religious sacrifices. But the tribesmen still prefer to hamstring the animals and then hack them to pieces in ceremonies like this one, which honors the rain gods. One of the biggest problems facing the Saigon government is integrating the nearly